What if buying dinners for two strangers could make you a millionaire overnight? This is Darius Johnson, 17 years old, washing dishes for $8 an hour. Tonight, he's about to make a choice that changes everything. The elderly white couple at table 6, digging through empty pockets, looking desperate. They're worth more money than most people see in 10 lifetimes, and they're here on purpose. As Darius approaches with his own dinner, the meal he saved 3 days to afford, he has no idea he's walking into a test. The old man's piercing blue eyes aren't just grateful, they're calculating. The woman's leather portfolio contains documents that will soon have Darius's name on them. But here's what makes this story incredible. Darius doesn't know any of this. He just sees two people who need help, and that's exactly what they're counting on. One act of kindness, two millionaires in disguise, a reward beyond imagination. But let me take you back to where this all began. Because to understand why what happens next is so extraordinary, you need to see what Darius's life was really like. 5:30 a.m. Every morning, the alarm clock beside Darius's bed doesn't even work anymore. His body just knows when to wake up. He rolls out of the narrow twin bed he slept in since he was 8 years old. The same bed his mother bought him before the accident. The floorboards creak as he tiptoes past his grandmother's room. Miss Ruby is already awake. She always is at this hour, but she pretends to sleep because she knows Darius worries about her. Through the thin wall, he can hear the wheeze of her breathing. The way she struggles even while lying down. Their house on Elm Street tells its own story. The yellow paint has faded to the color of old newspapers. The porch steps sag in the middle from decades of weight. Windows are held shut with duct tape because new ones cost money they don't have. But Miss Ruby keeps it clean, spotless even. Because being poor doesn't mean being proud, she always tells him. Darius pulls on the same jeans he wore yesterday. Checks the pocket for his bus fare. $347. Enough to get to work, not enough to get back. He'll have to walk the 3 miles home tonight, but that's okay. He's walked farther for less. The walk to Murphy's Diner takes him through neighborhoods that tell different stories, past the nice houses with manicured lawns and cars in driveways, past the apartment complex where his friend Jerome lives, where the parking lot is full of potholes and broken dreams. Past the abandoned shopping mall where older kids hang out, smoking and planning futures that probably won't happen. Murphy's Diner sits at the corner of 5th and Main, a beacon of fluorescent light in the pre-dawn darkness. Big Mike is already there prepping for the morning rush. He nods at Darius, not unfriendly, just busy. They don't talk much, but there's respect there. Mike knows Darius shows up every day, works harder than employees twice his age, and never complains. In the kitchen, Darius's hands move through familiar motions. Stack of plates, hot soapy water, scrub, rinse, dry, repeat. His hands are rough now, calloused from months of this routine. Sometimes he looks at them and wonders if college hands look different. Softer, maybe. Hands that hold textbooks instead of dish towels. The dishwashing station faces a small window that looks out onto the parking lot. While he works, Darius watches people come and go. Families heading to school and work. Construction crews grabbing coffee before job sites. Business people in suits talking on phones. All of them moving through lives he can only imagine. At 7:15, his shift ends. Time for the real challenge. School. Roosevelt High School squats like a tired brick building on the east side of town. The building needs paint. The computers are ancient and half the lockers don't work. But inside these walls, Darius transforms. Here, he's not the kid who washes dishes. He's the kid with straight A's who tutors other students during lunch. Mrs. Patterson, his English teacher, notices him first. Darius, you have a gift with words. She tells him one afternoon. Have you thought about college? College. The word feels foreign in his mouth. Kids like him don't go to college. Kids like him get jobs right out of high school if they're lucky. But Mrs. Patterson sees something different. She starts bringing him applications, scholarship information, pamphlets with pictures of campus quads and library towers. I can't afford it, Darius tells her quietly. Maybe not today, she says. But dreams have a way of finding funding when the dreamer is worthy. At lunch, while other kids buy hot meals from the cafeteria, Darius eats peanut butter sandwiches and reads college brochures, state university, community colleges, business programs. The numbers are staggering. Even with financial aid, it would take everything Miss Ruby has and more. After school, the cycle continues. More dishwashing at Murphy's. The evening crowd is different families celebrating little victories, couples on dates, elderly people making their meals last as long as possible to fight off loneliness. Darius watches them all. He notices things. The way the woman at table 3 carefully counts her change. The way the businessman at the counter leaves extra large tips on nights when the wait staff looks tired. The way kindness moves through the diner in small gestures and quiet moments. At home, Miss Ruby waits in her recliner, oxygen tank humming softly beside her. She's 73, but looks older. Diabetes, arthritis, high blood pressure. Her body is failing her, but her spirit stays strong. "How was your day, baby?" She asks the same question every evening. "Good, Grandma. Yours?" "Better now that you're home." They don't talk about the pills she can barely afford. They don't talk about the doctor visits she's been skipping. They don't talk about the college applications hidden in his backpack. Some conversations are too heavy for evening light. Instead, they watch the news together. Stories about other people's successes, other people's tragedies, other people's lives that seem to happen in a different universe from theirs. But tonight is different. Tonight, Darius will make a choice that changes everything. He just doesn't know it yet. What he also doesn't know is that for the past 3 days, someone has been watching him, asking questions about the young man who helps elderly neighbors with groceries, who tutors kids for free at the library, who gives up his bus fare to make sure Miss Ruby has lunch money. Someone who's about to put that character to the ultimate test. November rain in this part of town doesn't just fall, it attacks. Tonight, it hammers against Murphy's diner windows like bullets, turning the parking lot into a battlefield of puddles and rushing water. Darius scrapes his last table of the evening shift, his stomach hollow with anticipation. For 3 days, he's been saving every penny for this moment. No snacks after school, no soda with lunch, walking instead of taking the bus both ways. All for the simple pleasure of buying his own meal, sitting down like a customer instead of working behind the scenes. The burger and fries waiting at the pickup counter represent more than food. They represent choice. For once, Darius gets to decide what he eats instead of settling for whatever's cheapest. But as he reaches for his tray, something makes him stop. Table 6. The corner booth is usually reserved for couples on dates or families celebrating birthdays. Tonight, it holds 2 figures who look completely out of place. An elderly white couple, both soaked to the bone. The woman's silver hair drips steadily onto her designer coat. Even waterlogged, Darius can tell the coat cost more than he makes in a month. Her husband sits ramrod straight despite his age, but his expensive suit clings to him like wet newspaper. They ordered coffee, nothing else, just coffee, and they've been nursing those same 2 cups for over an hour. Darius watches from behind the counter as the woman opens her purse for the 4th time. Her movements grow more frantic with each search. She dumps the contents onto the table: tissues, reading glasses, breath mints, but no wallet, no money clip, nothing. She whispers something urgent to her husband. He pats down his coat pockets, then his pants pockets, then back to his coat. The shake of his head tells the story before he even speaks. "I don't understand," the woman says loud enough for Darius to hear. "I had it when we left the house. I'm sure I had it." Her husband checks his pockets again, more desperately this time. He pulls out an antique gold pocket watch, examines it as if money might magically appear behind its face. Nothing. Sandy, the evening waitress, approaches their table with obvious reluctance. She's worked here long enough to recognize the signs. Nice people, bad situation. The kind of problem that breaks your heart, but doesn't pay the bills. "Folks, I hate to bother you," but she holds the check between 2 fingers like it might bite her. The woman's face crumbles. "We're so embarrassed. We seem to have misplaced our wallet. I don't know how. This has never happened before." Through fragments of their conversation, Darius pieces together their story. Their Mercedes broke down on the interstate 2 miles from the nearest exit. They walked through the storm to find help, hoping to call their son from the diner's pay phone. But the pay phone is broken, held together with electrical tape and good intentions. The man's voice carries decades of authority, even in defeat. Perhaps we could leave something as collateral. I have my watch and my wife has some important papers. I'm sorry, Sandy interrupts gently, but Mike has a strict policy. No exceptions. Big Mike himself appears from the kitchen, arms crossed over his chest. He's not cruel, just practical. The diner operates on razor-thin margins. Free meals, even for desperate elderly couples, can't happen. Not if he wants to keep the doors open. Look, folks, Mike says, his voice softer than his expression. I wish I could help, but we understand, the man says quickly, rising from the booth. Come, Margaret, we'll figure something out. Margaret clutches a worn leather portfolio against her chest like a shield. For just a moment, as she stands, Darius catches sight of what's inside. Official-looking documents, certificates of some kind, and something with an embossed gold logo that seems familiar, though he can't place where he's seen it before. The couple moves toward the door, their dignity intact, but their pride clearly wounded. Outside, the storm rages with renewed fury. Lightning illuminates the empty parking lot where their broken-down luxury car waits like a stranded island. They can't go back out in that, Sandy murmurs, watching through the window. Not at their age, not in this weather, but Mike has already turned away back to his kitchen. Back to the business of staying afloat. Darius looks at his untouched meal on the counter. The burger is still warm. Fries are still crispy. The reward for 3 days of sacrifice, sitting there while two people who clearly lived very different lives face a humiliation. He knows the elderly couple reaches the door. The man's hand is on the handle when Margaret stops looking back at the warm diner they're about to leave for the cold, wet night. That's when Darius makes his choice. But what he doesn't know, what he can't possibly know is that this moment has been 3 days in the making. That the broken-down Mercedes in the parking lot has been strategically positioned. That the lost wallet is safely tucked in Margaret's coat pocket. That Harold's antique watch has a hidden compartment containing more cash than Darius makes in a year. He's about to walk into the most important test of his life, disguised as a simple act of kindness. Darius doesn't think, he just moves. His meal sits on the counter, still warm, still waiting, still representing 3 days of careful sacrifice. But watching Margaret's shoulders slump as she faces the storm-lashed parking lot, something inside him simply decides. Sandy, he calls out, crossing the diner in quick strides. Hold up. The elderly couple turns. Margaret's eyes are rimmed red, whether from embarrassment or the cold rain, Darius can't tell. Harold's pale blue eyes fix on him with startling intensity, as if he's seeing Darius for the first time. Folks, Darius says, approaching their table with his untouched tray. This one's on me tonight. Silence. Margaret blinks rapidly. Oh, sweetheart, that's very kind, but we couldn't possibly. Please. Darius sets the burger and fries in front of them, then slides into the booth without invitation. My grandmother always says kindness is the only thing that multiplies when you give it away. Harold's gaze never waver from Darius's face. Something flickers behind those pale eyes. Calculation, recognition, but his voice remains steady, dignified. Son, this is your meal. You worked for this and I can work for another one. Darius flags Sandy down. Can you bring them some fresh coffee and maybe see if Big Mike will let you use the kitchen phone to call about their car? Sandy nods, understanding immediately. Pete's garage is still open. He does emergency towing. As Sandy bustles away, Darius turns back to the couple. I'm Darius, by the way. Darius Johnson Harold, the man says, extending a hand that feels surprisingly strong for his age. And this is my wife, Margaret. Margaret's hands shake as she reaches for a French fry, and Darius pretends not to notice. We haven't eaten since breakfast, she admits quietly. Our car broke down on Route 47, and we walked here in the rain. We thought we had our wallet, but she trails off embarrassed. Cars break down, Darius says simply. Happens to everyone. Harold studies him with those penetrating blue eyes. You work here after school and weekends saving for college. What do you want to study? Business administration. Maybe something that could help my community. Darius shrugs, suddenly self-conscious. Sounds silly, probably. Not silly at all. Harold's voice carries an authority that seems at odds with his current situation. Tell me about your community. It's an odd question from a stranded traveler, but Darius finds himself answering anyway. Roosevelt High needs better computers. The neighborhood could use a medical clinic. People have to travel across town for basic care. And there's this old shopping mall that's been abandoned for years. Prime real estate just sitting empty. Margaret and Harold exchange a glance. She clutches her leather portfolio tighter against her chest. And again, Darius catches a glimpse of that embossed gold logo. Something about it tugs at his memory, but he can't place it. Sandy returns with the coffee and news. Pete's on his way. I should be here in 20 minutes. Thank you, Harold says, then turns back to Darius. What's your last name again? Johnson. Darius Johnson. Harold pulls out an expensive business card holder. Real leather gold corners, then pauses. Instead of selecting one of the elegant cards inside, he reaches for a plain napkin and writes carefully on it. Darius Johnson, Harold repeats as if testing how the name sounds. And your address? The question seems oddly formal, but Darius gives it anyway. 1427 Elm Street. Margaret whispers something urgent to her husband, gesturing toward her portfolio. Harold nods and turns back to Darius. Son, Harold says, his tone shifting to something that sounds almost ceremonial. What you did tonight, giving up your meal for complete strangers, tells me everything I need to know about your character. It's just food, Darius protests. You needed it more than I did. Just food. Harold smiles, but there's something behind it that makes Darius feel like he's missing something important. Margaret, show him. Margaret hesitates, then opens her portfolio slightly. Inside, Darius glimpses official documents, certificates with fancy seals, and what looks like architectural blueprints. Everything bears that same gold logo he can't quite identify. We're not just stranded travelers, Margaret says carefully. We're here for business. Very important business. Before Darius can ask what kind of business requires architectural blueprints, Pete's tow truck rumbles into the parking lot, its headlights cutting through the rain. Harold stands, straightening to his full height. In the harsh fluorescent light of the diner, his bearing transforms. Gone is the helpless elderly man. In his place stands someone who clearly expects to be obeyed, respected, listened to. Pete. Harold calls out as the mechanic enters, shaking rain from his coat. Yes, sir. You the folks with the Mercedes? We are. Harold's tone is crisp, businesslike. How quickly can you have it running? Pete scratches his head. Well, sir, it depends on what's wrong with it. Might need to tow it back to the shop, run some diagnostics. Money is not an issue, Harold interrupts. Whatever it takes. Darius blinks. 30 minutes ago, this man couldn't afford a cup of coffee. Now he's telling a mechanic that money is no object. As they prepare to leave, Harold pauses at the table where Darius still sits, trying to process what just happened. Son, Harold says, placing a firm hand on Darius's shoulder. You've given us something far more valuable than a meal tonight, and I want you to know we don't forget kindness. He slips the napkin with Darius's information into his coat pocket like it's a precious document. Margaret steps forward, still clutching her portfolio. Darius, what you did tonight means more than you realize, more than you can possibly imagine. It was just, Darius begins. It was a character, Harold interrupts, pure unselfish character, the kind that's rarer than diamonds and more valuable than gold. As they head toward the door with Pete, Harold turns back one final time. The storm has passed and street lights illuminate his profile. For just a moment in that light, he looks familiar, not like someone Darius has met, but like someone he's seen somewhere before, in a newspaper maybe, or on television. We'll be in touch, Harold says. And something in his voice makes it sound less like a polite goodbye and more like a promise. The Mercedes starts on the first try. As the luxury car disappears into the night, Darius sits alone in the empty diner, staring at his reflection in the rain-streaked window. Something extraordinary just happened, but he can't quite put his finger on what. What he doesn't know is that Harold is already on his phone making calls that will change everything. The first call is to his assistant. Cancel my morning meetings. I need background checks, academic records, and character references for a young man named Darius Johnson. The second call is to his lawyer. Draft the paperwork we discussed. I think we found our candidate. The third call will happen at exactly 900 a.m. tomorrow morning to the principal of Roosevelt High School. But for now, Darius just sits in the quiet diner, wondering why giving away his dinner feels like the beginning of something much bigger than hunger. The diner feels different after they leave. Quieter, like the air itself is holding its breath. Sandy approaches Darius's table, shaking her head in amazement. Honey, I've been waitressing for 15 years, and I've never seen anything like that. Like what? Darius asks, still staring out the window where the Mercedes disappeared. You just gave your dinner to complete strangers. Your own meal that you saved 3 days to buy. She slides into the booth across from him. Most people would have looked the other way. Most people aren't raised by Miss Ruby Johnson. Sandy laughs. That grandmother of yours sure did something right. She pauses, studying his face. But there was something strange about that couple, don't you think? Before Darius can answer, Big Mike emerges from the kitchen carrying a fresh plate. Burger, fries, and a slice of apple pie that definitely wasn't part of the original order. Kid, Mike says, setting the food in front of Darius. What you did tonight took real heart. Darius looks up surprised. In 6 months of working here, Big Mike has never offered him anything for free. The man runs his diner like a military operation. Every penny accounted for, every portion measured. Mr. Mike, I can't accept. You're not accepting charity. Mike's gruff voice softens slightly. You're accepting respect. There's a difference, but the cost. The cost is mine to worry about. Mike pulls out the chair Sandy vacated and sits down heavily. You know what I saw tonight. I saw a young man with more class than customers who drive cars worth more than my house. Darius takes a bite of the burger. His first real food in hours. They seemed nice. Just had some bad luck. Bad luck. Mike nods slowly. Funny thing about bad luck, though. Sometimes it reveals good character and sometimes it reveals something else entirely. What do you mean? Mike stands, adjusting his apron. Nothing, kid. Just eat your dinner. You earned it twice over tonight. As Mike returns to the kitchen, Sandy leans closer. He's right. You know, there was something off about those people. Off? How? Well, for starters, Pete said their car started right up once they got to it. No engine trouble at all. Just needed a jump, he said, like the battery had been disconnected on purpose. Darius frowns. That's weird. And another thing. Did you see how that old man pulled out his wallet when Pete asked for payment? A wallet thick enough to choke a horse. Funny how he couldn't find it when it came time to pay for coffee. The observation hits Darius like cold water. Harold had claimed they lost their wallet, but he'd paid Pete without any trouble at all. How do you lose a wallet and find it again in 20 minutes? Maybe it was in the car, Darius suggests weakly. Maybe. Sandy doesn't sound convinced. Or maybe there's more to this story than meets the eye. The walk home takes Darius through neighborhoods that tell the whole story of his town. Past the nice houses with their perfect lawns and security systems, past the apartment complexes where families like his make do with less. Past the empty lots and boarded-up buildings that speak to dreams deferred. At home, Miss Ruby waits in her recliner, oxygen tank humming softly beside her. The late news flickers on the television, but she's not really watching. Baby, you're later than usual. Is everything all right? Darius tells her about the elderly couple, expecting her usual pride in his kindness. Instead, she listens with growing intensity, asking detailed questions about their appearance, their clothes, their car, silver hair, you said, and pale blue eyes. Yeah, Grandma, why? Miss Ruby reaches for the television remote and turns up the volume. Sometimes angels come disguised as people in need, testing our hearts. They weren't angels, Grandma. Just people having a hard night. She pats his hand with fingers that feel paper thin. You keep that generous heart, Darius. It's going to take you places you can't even imagine. Places like what? Like wherever good people are supposed to end up. That night, lying in his narrow bed, Darius replays every moment of the encounter. Harold's intense blue eyes. Margaret's mysterious portfolio. The way Harold's entire bearing changed when Pete arrived. The business card holder he never used. The napkin with Darius's information treated like a valuable document. His phone buzzes. A text from Jerome. Heard you bought dinner for some random old folks at Murphy's. Man, you're going to be broke forever helping everybody. Darius smiles in the darkness. Maybe Jerome's right. Maybe kindness is a luxury he can't afford. But tonight, seeing gratitude replace humiliation in two strangers' eyes felt worth more than any meal he'd ever eaten. What Darius doesn't know is that 3 blocks away in the penthouse suite of the Grand View Hotel, Harold and Margaret Whitmore are reviewing a thick folder with his name on the cover. Inside are his academic records, character references from teachers and neighbors, and a detailed report on his family's situation compiled over the past 3 days. Perfect score, Margaret murmurs, scanning the documents. Better than perfect, Harold replies, making notes in the margin. He didn't just pass the test. He exceeded every expectation. Tomorrow morning, they'll make the phone call that changes everything. The next morning brings questions that don't have answers. Darius arrives at Murphy's to find Sandy practically vibrating with excitement. That couple from last night. Pete told me something crazy. When he got to their car, there was already someone waiting. A driver in a black suit. What do you mean? Professional guy standing next to a second car. Pete heard the old man talking about foundation protocols and candidate assessment. What kind of stranded folks talk like that? The words hit Darius strangely. Foundation protocols. Candidate assessment. During the first period, Mrs. Patterson pulls him aside. Darius, I received an interesting phone call this morning. Someone asking about your character, your grades, your plans for college. She studies his face. They knew an awful lot about you already. What do you mean? They knew your GPA, your job at Murphy's, even that you walked Mrs. Carter's groceries home every Tuesday. Her voice drops. They weren't asking if you were a good student. They were asking if you were a good person. At lunch, Jerome finds him in the library, phone in hand. Yo, D, you need to see this. He slides his phone across the table. Look at this news article. The headline reads, Whitmore Foundation announces surprise local visit. Darius scans quickly. The Whitmore Foundation, worth $200 million, is conducting community assessments for a major new initiative. Their CEO personally visits potential sites, but Darius has stopped reading. His eyes lock on the foundation's logo, an elegant gold emblem, the same logo he glimpsed in Margaret's leather portfolio last night. Jerome, what does the CEO look like? Don't say. The article mentions he's intensely private and avoids publicity photos. Jerome looks curious. Why? Before Darius can answer, the intercom crackles throughout Roosevelt High. Darius Johnson, please report to the principal's office immediately. In 6 years at Roosevelt High, Darius has never been called to the principal's office. Not once. As he walks through hallways, students stare and whisper. Teachers pause to watch him pass. Through the glass windows of the main office, Darius sees Principal Martinez talking to 2 figures seated across from his desk. An elderly white couple in expensive clothes, Harold and Margaret, but they're not the desperate travelers from last night. Harold's posture commands attention. Margaret's designer coat is immaculate, and spread across the principal's desk are official documents bearing the same gold logo Darius just saw in the newspaper. His legs feel unsteady as the secretary opens the door. Mr. Johnson, they're waiting for you. The moment Darius steps into Principal Martinez's office, the world tilts sideways. Harold stands up, not the frail, stranded, elderly man from Murphy's diner, but someone who commands rooms with his presence. His expensive suit is immaculate. His pale blue eyes hold the sharp focus of a man accustomed to making million-dollar decisions. Hello again, son. Darius's mouth goes dry. You're Harold Whitmore. I am. Harold's smile is warm but calculating. And last night you bought dinner for one of the most powerful philanthropists in the state. The question is why. The room spins. Darius grips the back of a chair to steady himself. You needed help. It didn't matter who you were. Exactly. Margaret speaks for the first time, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to boardrooms and million-dollar budgets. Harold, show him. Principal Martinez, who's been silent until now, slides a thick folder across his desk. Darius's school photo is paper-clipped to the cover along with his full name in bold letters. Darius Johnson, Candidate Assessment. We've been researching you for the past 72 hours, Harold explains, opening the folder to reveal page after page of documentation, academic transcripts, work evaluations from Big Mike, character references from teachers, even photographs of Darius helping elderly neighbors with groceries. Darius stares at the papers, his mind struggling to process what he's seeing. "You've been watching me. We've been evaluating you," Margaret corrects gently. "The Whitmore Foundation is launching our most ambitious project ever, a comprehensive community development initiative. We need someone local, someone who understands real hardship but maintains hope. Someone whose character we can trust." "Absolutely," Harold adds, turning pages in the folder. "Straight A's despite working 20 hours a week. Teachers describe you as remarkably mature and genuinely compassionate. Your boss says you're the most reliable employee he's ever had. Mrs. Carter from the corner store mentions you help with her inventory every week without being asked." Margaret continues, reading from a typed report. "Mrs. Williams says you shovel her walkway every winter and refuse payment. The librarian notes you tutor struggling students during your lunch breaks. Darius feels like he's watching this happen to someone else. I don't understand. You were testing me." Harold closes the folder and looks directly into Darius's eyes. "Last night wasn't an accident. We've been in town for 3 days asking questions, observing. Your name came up repeatedly as someone who embodies the values we're looking for." "So, the broken down car staged." Harold's tone is matter of fact. "We needed to create a situation where you could choose kindness or indifference, where the choice would cost you something you valued." "The lost wallet." Margaret pats her coat pocket. "Safe and sound the entire time." The betrayal hits him like a physical blow. "You lied to me. We created a scenario." Harold corrects. "There's a difference. What we wanted to see was authentic. How you'd respond when you thought no one was watching. When there was nothing in it for you." Principal Martinez leans forward. "Darius, they're offering you opportunities that could change your life." "What kind of opportunities?" Darius asks, though part of him isn't sure he wants to hear the answer. Margaret opens her leather portfolio, the same one she clutched so protectively last night, revealing documents that make Darius's breath catch. University logos, legal letterhead, financial statements with numbers that have too many zeros. "A full scholarship to any accredited university you choose," Harold begins, his voice taking on the tone of a business presentation. "Tuition, room, board, books, living expenses. 4 years completely covered. During summers and school breaks, you'll intern directly with our foundation," Margaret continues. "Learning nonprofit management, community development, social enterprise, and after graduation," Harold smiles. "You'll return here as assistant director of our newest community development center. 2 years of training with our established team. Then if both parties agree, you become director." Darius looks around the room, half expecting to wake up from an impossible dream. "You want me to run a community center? We want you to help us build one first." Harold spreads architectural blueprints across the principal's desk. Detailed plans for a gleaming facility that looks like something from a magazine. Margaret points to elegant lettering across the building's facade. "The Darius Johnson Community Development Center. You want to name it after me." Darius's voice comes out as a whisper. "We want you to be its founding director," Harold clarifies. "This represents a $25 million investment in your community. But we don't just write checks and disappear. We partner with local leaders who share our vision. The numbers are impossible. $25 million. More money than everyone on Elm Street has seen combined. More money than Darius thought existed outside of movies and lottery commercials." "Why me?" he asks, though he's beginning to understand. "Because transformation has to come from within," Margaret explains. "We can build buildings, fund programs, and hire staff. But authentic change requires someone who genuinely loves their community despite its problems." Harold nods. "Someone who sees potential instead of just poverty. Someone who gives away their last meal to strangers because it's the right thing to do." Principal Martinez speaks up. "Darius, in 30 years of education, I've never seen an opportunity like this." But Darius is still processing the deception. The whole thing was fake. Your car, your situation, your desperation, all of it. "The test was real," Harold says firmly. "Your response was real. Your character was real. Those are the only things that matter." We've funded hundreds of projects, Margaret adds. But we've never offered full partnership to someone your age. You'd be the youngest director in our foundation's history. Harold pulls out his real business card, this time heavy card stock with the gold logo embossed in the corner. Take 2 weeks to think about it. Visit our other community centers. Talk to people whose lives we've changed together. Make sure this aligns with your own vision. As he hands Darius the card, Harold's expression softens. And son, regardless of what you decide about the center, your college tuition is covered. What you did last night, giving something precious to strangers, deserves recognition no matter what. Darius stares at the business card, at the blueprints, at the impossible opportunity spread across the principal's desk. There's just one condition, Margaret says, her voice serious. You can't do this for the money or recognition. You have to genuinely want to serve your community, because that's the only way it works. Outside the principal's office, students are changing classes, moving through their ordinary day while Darius sits in a room where his entire future is being rewritten. But the biggest shock is still coming when he realizes this isn't just about him. It's about everyone he's ever tried to help, everyone he's ever dreamed of lifting up, everyone who's ever believed that kindness matters even when no one is watching. This is about proving that sometimes, just sometimes, good people really do win. The blueprints spread across Principal Martinez's desk look like something from a different world. A world where dreams have architectural plans and hope comes with construction timelines. Harold traces his finger along the building's outline. The Darius Johnson Community Development Center will sit on 15 acres where the old Riverside Mall currently stands. We've already secured the land. Darius blinks. The abandoned mall. But that's been empty for years. Prime real estate, Margaret confirms, opening another folder. Perfect location, excellent transportation access, and large enough for everything your community needs. The detailed plans are breathtaking. A state-of-the-art medical clinic with examination rooms and a pharmacy. Computer labs equipped with the latest technology. Job training facilities with equipment for everything from automotive repair to culinary arts. A library with study spaces and meeting rooms. Even a commercial kitchen for community meals and catering training. This level represents healthcare services, Harold explains, pointing to the first floor. Full medical and dental clinic staffed by professionals but affordable for everyone. We're talking about routine care, chronic disease management, and preventive medicine. The second floor focuses on education and job training, Margaret continues. Computer literacy, GED preparation, vocational certification programs. We want to give people skills that lead to real employment. Darius studies the plans, his mind racing. You're talking about everything this community has needed for decades. Exactly. Harold's eyes light up. But here's what makes this different from typical charity work. This isn't about us coming in and fixing things. This is about partnership. We provide resources. You provide local knowledge and leadership. Principal Martinez leans forward. Darius, the economic impact alone would be transformational. Construction jobs, permanent employment, increased property values, new businesses attracted to the area. Margaret opens her leather portfolio again, revealing financial projections that make Darius's head spin. We're projecting initial construction costs of $15 million plus a $10 million endowment for operations. But the real value comes from what happens next. What do you mean? What? Harold slides another document across the desk. Conservative estimates suggest this center will serve over 3,000 people annually. Medical clinic visits, educational programs, job placements, community events. We're talking about touching virtually every family in this area. The numbers are staggering. But what hits Darius hardest is seeing his neighborhood's problems laid out in official documents with real solutions attached. Roosevelt High's computer lab hasn't been updated in 8 years. Margaret reads from her notes. 41% of adults in this zip code lack basic digital literacy. The nearest medical clinic is 12 miles away, creating transportation barriers for elderly and low-income residents. We know, Harold adds, because we spent 6 months studying this area before we ever set foot in Murphy's Diner. 63% of children live below the poverty line. But we also found something else. He turns to a page filled with interview transcripts. Darius recognizes names, neighbors, teachers, local business owners. Page after page of people mentioning his name. They talk about the young man who helps with groceries, Margaret reads, who tutors kids at the library, who shows up at community meetings with ideas and optimism, who treats everyone with respect regardless of their circumstances. You're already a community leader, Harold observes. We're just offering you tools to expand your impact. Darius looks at the salary figures and nearly falls from his chair. More money than Miss Ruby has seen in her lifetime. Enough to ensure her medical care, to renovate their house, to transform not just his life but hers too. There's one critical condition, Margaret says, her voice becoming serious. You can't do this for the money or recognition. The moment this becomes about personal gain instead of community service, it stops working. How do you know I won't change? Darius asks. How do you know success won't corrupt me? Harold smiles. Because yesterday you gave away your dinner to strangers. Not because you had to. Not because someone was watching. Because it was the right thing to do. Character that deep doesn't shift with circumstances. Margaret adds it only gets stronger with resources. Principal Martinez speaks up. Darius, I've watched you for 4 years. You're the same kid whether you're washing dishes or tutoring in the library. Whether you have money in your pocket or you're walking home in the rain because you spent bus fare on someone else. Harold pulls out a thick contract. Here's what we're proposing in specific terms. Full scholarship to any accredited university, your choice of school, your choice of major. During summer breaks, you'll work directly with our foundation team at existing centers in Chicago, Atlanta, and Denver. You'll learn grant writing, program development, community outreach, financial management, Margaret continues. Everything you need to run a major nonprofit operation. After graduation, you return here as assistant director, working alongside our established team for 2 years. Then, assuming mutual agreement, you become director with full operational authority. The contract includes specifics that make this feel suddenly impossibly real. Starting salary as assistant director, $65,000 annually. Director salary $90,000 plus performance bonuses. Health care benefits, retirement planning, professional development budget. We're also proposing a community advisory board. Harold adds, local residents who help guide programming and ensure we're meeting real needs. This isn't about imposing outside solutions. It's about amplifying local wisdom with adequate resources. Darius thinks about Miss Ruby's medical bills, about Roosevelt High's outdated computers, about the boarded-up buildings on Elm Street that could house thriving businesses. What if I'm not ready? He asks quietly. What if I fail? Then you'll have failed while trying to help your community. Margaret responds. That's not failure. That's heroism. Harold leans back in his chair. Son, we've funded hundreds of projects over 20 years. We know potential when we see it. You have something most people never develop, the ability to see what could be instead of just what is. Plus, Margaret adds with a smile, you'll have the full backing of a $200 million foundation. You won't be doing this alone. Darius stares at the documents, the blueprints, the impossible opportunity laid out before him. Everything he's dreamed of for his community, rendered in precise architectural detail and backed by more resources than he ever imagined possible. Take your time, Harold says gently. Visit our other centers. Talk to directors who started exactly where you are now. Make sure this feels right. But deep down, Darius already knows his answer. The question isn't whether he wants this opportunity. The question is whether he's brave enough to believe he deserves it. 18 months later, the transformation is nothing short of miraculous. Where the abandoned Riverside Mall once stood, the Darius Johnson Community Development Center rises like a beacon of possibility. Glass walls reflect morning sunlight. Modern architecture blends with the neighborhood's character, and everywhere, people move with purpose. Darius, now 20 and a sophomore at State University studying nonprofit management, spends winter break overseeing the Cent's grand opening preparations. He's taller somehow, carries himself with quiet confidence, but his eyes still hold the same kindness that caught Harold's attention. The medical clinic opened 6 months ago and immediately changed everything. Dr. Sarah Martinez has already seen over 800 patients. Miss Ruby is among them. Her diabetes under control, her arthritis managed with physical therapy, her oxygen tank retired for good. Baby, Miss Ruby says, sitting on their renovated porch. You see that sign up there? The massive banner reads Darius Johnson Community Development Center. Transforming lives together. Still feels like someone else's name, Darius admits. It's the name of the man you became when you chose kindness over convenience. Inside the center, the computer lab buzzes with activity. 30 adults learn skills that actually lead to employment. Mrs. Carter discovers she has a gift for digital inventory management. Jerome's mother enrolls in graphic design courses and lands her first freelance client within 2 months. The job training programs exceed every projection. Automotive repair, culinary arts, healthcare administration, all leading to industry certifications that employers want. Roosevelt High's test scores jumped 22% in the first year. Students now have quiet study spaces, modern computers, and tutoring programs staffed by college students who look like them. The Sense commercial kitchen became something unexpected. Big Mike expands his catering business, hiring 6 new employees from the job training program. Sandy opens her own restaurant, a small cafe inside the center. Local news coverage brings state attention. Channel 7 features the Darius Effect, documenting how one center sparked transformation throughout the neighborhood. Property values on Elm Street rise as abandoned houses get renovated by residents who learned construction skills. The governor visits for the ribbon cutting. The Whitmore Foundation model proves that sustainable change requires local leadership supported by strategic investment. We're implementing similar partnerships in 5 additional communities. But the real stories happen quietly. Elderly residents get regular checkups. Teenagers choose study groups over street corners. Small businesses launch, creating jobs for neighbors who'd given up hope. Crime drops 18% in the first year, not because of increased security, but because people have better things to do. Harold and Margaret attend every milestone, but they stand in the back, letting Darius and the community take center stage. In his ribbon-cutting speech, Darius thanks them, but focuses on neighbors who made the vision real. This center exists because Mrs. Patterson believed in her students. Because Big Mike showed kindness to a kid who washed dishes, because Miss Ruby taught me that generosity multiplies when you share it. The applause echoes off the glass walls, but Darius notices Harold wiping his eyes. A reporter approaches Darius afterward. What's next for the center? Sustainability, Darius answers. We're not just providing services. We're teaching people to provide services for each other. In 5 years, this community won't need us anymore. They'll be helping other communities instead. That's an unusual goal for a nonprofit director. The goal was never to create dependency. It was to create capacity. There's a difference. 6 months after opening, that difference becomes clear. The Sense programs have generated 43 new jobs, launched 12 small businesses, and placed 67 people in full-time employment outside the community. But the most important number is one. One act of kindness that multiplied into thousands. What nobody could have predicted was what would happen next when Darius faced his first real test as a leader, proving that character under pressure looks exactly like character under poverty. 2 years later, Darius, now 22 and the Sense official director, sits in his office reviewing applications for the foundation's newest scholarship program. Through his window, he watches children play in the Sense playground while their parents attend GED classes. His office walls tell the story of transformation. Framed photos of the Sense construction. The first graduating class of the culinary program. Miss Ruby cutting the ribbon at the medical clinic's expansion. Harold and Margaret at last month's community appreciation dinner. A soft knock interrupts his thoughts. Sandy from Murphy's Diner peers in, nervous but determined. Darius, I'm sorry to bother you, but there's a family at the diner. Their stranded car broke down and they can't pay for their meal. I remembered what you did that night and thought, maybe. Darius smiles, closing his laptop without hesitation. I'll be right there. Murphy's Diner looks exactly the same. Fluorescent lights, worn booths, the smell of coffee and possibility. But the corner booth where Harold and Margaret once sat now holds a young Hispanic couple with 2 small children, huddled together and speaking in worried whispers. The woman apologizes in broken English while her husband counts pocket change with shaking hands. Their clothes are travel-worn. Their eyes hold the familiar mixture of pride and desperation that Darius remembers too well. Folks, Darius says, approaching their table with 2 meals from the counter. This one's on me tonight. As they eat, He learns their story. Miguel and Rosa migrating north for construction work promised by Rosa's cousin. Their car broke down on the interstate, their savings barely enough for the towing fee. They have skills, Miguel in construction, Rosa in child care, but no connections, no references, no way to prove their worth to potential employers. You know, Darius says thoughtfully, we're always looking for good people at the community center. Can't promise anything permanent, but maybe we can help you get started. He pulls out his business card, simple, professional, with the Sense gold logo. On the back, he writes their names carefully, just as Harold once wrote his. Miguel and Rosa Santos, he says aloud, the same way Harold once repeated his name. And your phone number. 2 hours later, Miguel is reviewing job opportunities in the Sense construction training program. Rosa is discussing child care positions with the Sense Family Services coordinator. Their children are already making friends in the youth program. That evening, Harold calls to check on the Sense quarterly progress. How are things going, Director Johnson? Good, Darius replies, watching Miguel help other job training students with electrical wiring while Rosa organizes the children's play area. Really good. I think I'm starting to understand something you told me once. What's that? Kindness is the only investment that always pays dividends. Harold chuckles. And what's your return rate so far? Darius looks out at the thriving center, thinks about Miss Ruby's renewed health, Jerome's college acceptance letter, the 43 jobs created, the 12 businesses launched, the thousands of lives touched. Immeasurable, he says. That night, as Darius walks home past the bustling community center that bears his name, he realizes the most important lesson of all. Transformation isn't a destination. It's a choice you make every day, one act of kindness at a time. The Darius Johnson Community Development Center now serves over 4,000 people annually, proving that when kindness meets opportunity, entire communities can transform. But this story isn't unique. It's happening in neighborhoods across America, led by ordinary people who choose extraordinary compassion. Right now in your own community, someone like Darius is washing dishes after school, helping elderly neighbors, believing in possibilities others can't see. They're not waiting for permission to make a difference. They're already doing it one small act at a time. What if your kindness could unlock someone's potential? What if a stranger's generosity could change your trajectory? Here's what I want you to do. Think about one person in your life who showed you unexpected kindness. Share their story in the comments below. Let's remind each other that transformation starts with seeing the person, not their circumstances. Like this video if you believe kindness still matters. Subscribe for more real-life stories that prove ordinary people create extraordinary change.